Bob, and we're live. So, hello everyone. Welcome to Maddox Scale and Customer Success Summit. You're currently watching You've Scaled CS. Now what? Indispensable strategic skills for next gen CSMs. I'm excited to introduce our speaker today. And as I introduce him, I'm also going to have him answer a quick icebreaker question. So introducing Bob London, founder and chief listening officer at boblondon.co. Bob, before we continue into your background, what would you like to scale in your personal life if you could choose at least one thing?
Well, I've been thinking about this a lot because the question was given to me in advance and I still don't have a good But I would say it's not personal. I would say I would like to scale to have more time to give this session. That's not a throwing shade at Matic. I just love talking about this stuff. So I wish there were three of me and we could talk about it for 5 hours with a bunch of people who are interested. So I'll go with that answer. How's that?
I love it. I love it. And for everybody listening, in addition to being the founder and chief listening officer at boblondon.co, Bob is also an entrepreneur in residence at the University of Maryland's Dingman Center for Entrepreneurship and a board member of Mindshare, one of the country's leading organizations for tech CEOs and founders. So before we get started today, just a quick reminder, please add any questions that you have to the chat here. Any questions that we don't get to, we'll share with our speakers after the session and post the answers alongside the session recording when the Resource Hub goes live. With that, I'll go ahead and leave the stage. So Bob, you can take things over and have a great session today. So thank you again so much for being here. We're all excited to see the stuff that you put together for us today.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity, and you guys have put together at Matic an amazing, in addition to an amazing product, an amazing event that is getting a lot of buzz. And I'm already hearing from people who've been to the earlier sessions that it's very valuable. So thank you for having me. So I'm going to talk about two things. The meat of what I'm going to talk about will follow in a few minutes, and you're going to get this deluge. I'm going to just hand over to you almost an entire toolkit of what I teach, which is called Radically Authentic Discovery. So it's basically a method to help teams, both sales and post-sales, but in this case, I'll focus on the post-sales, better questions to ask customers to get them to open up, have more of a strategic conversation, which is one of the skills you'll need in the future, and how to, talk a little bit about, the ability to engage customers in more of a conversation instead of sort of a slide PowerPoint driven conversation where the customer doesn't have much chance to talk. But first, I need to talk to you about something. I don't want to scare you, but if you're in customer success, I think we're already seeing, imagine standing on the train tracks and there's a tunnel and there is a train in that tunnel and you can see the headlight of the train. And that train has some momentum to it, and the train is being driven by a macro economy. There's not as much growth happening, not as much new sales going on. New customer sales, new logo sales. There is pressure for companies to become profitable because the new funding has dried up in many cases. So I'm just a realist. I'm like, let's just say there's a train and be realistic, because we're already starting to see and have been seeing probably for a year the role of CS teams evolving into having an expectation that they will either find or close, actually in some cases close revenue expansion opportunities or new opportunities. So I'm trying to help understand that world and then provide a vision for what's coming down the road, and how that vision, if it does come true, which I think it will affect your jobs on a regular basis. So to do that, I'm going to give you a little story. By the way, here's who I am. I do two things, basically. I teach this thing called discovery and listening skills. I've done 2,700 discovery conversations. And the way I've done those is my other line of business, if you will, is I do customer listening tours for companies that want to get an independent look at customer experience, customer satisfaction, churn, value proposition, messaging, and things like that. So I have a lot of experience. And just meaning that I'm old, older than a lot of you. But the value of that is I can give you a little history lesson. So I used to be in marketing, right? So I'm going to give you, I've been in business for a long time. There was once, it's going to sound like a bedtime story, but don't fall asleep. There was once a fast growing B2B company that had a particular department where the team worked really hard. They were all super friendly and always trying to be helpful, and they seemed very busy. The team's budget and headcount grew as the business grew, and everyone was okay with that. No one was really scrutinizing headcount and budget. Then one day, the board asked the CEO of this company a question. Hey, every year you add people and budget to this particular department. How does their work benefit the business? And the CEO said what he thought was a pretty straightforward answer. Well, we're growing and every B2B company has this department. And so it's pretty standard. So we keep increasing the budget. To which the board member said, you didn't answer the question. How does this department's work help the business? The CEO was kind of struggling a little bit to answer the question, did this department help increase revenue? Did it help decrease costs? Did it help reduce risk? And the next day, after the board conversation, the CEO called the department head of this particular department and said, here's what the board asked me. What do you think? And the department head said, well, in our industry, companies spend about 5% of the revenue on our department, and we are in line with that. And the CEO started to realize the problem and said, the CEO said, you haven't answered the question. How does your work, your output achieve outcomes and benefit the business? So you might think this might sound familiar, like this might be happening in customer success today, but I'm actually talking about the marketing department of most B2B companies that for 100 years leading up to around the year 2010. And marketing teams back then performed lots of activities, but they weren't necessarily built to sort of measurably deliver what the business really needed, which was growth. Cost-effective awareness, cost-effective lead gen campaigns that generated ROI and helped drive, really led directly to sales growth. That's why marketing teams today in B2B companies look almost nothing like they did before 2010. The advent of marketing automation platforms, of better growth strategies, of all the channels that we now take for granted that we can scale on social media and all kinds of digital channels. And so the team had to be reinvented, right? And the function had to be reinvented to become accountable. And the reason I'm sharing that story with you, in case you couldn't tell, is that's the train in the tunnel that I'm referring to that's already popping out of the tunnel and headed towards us in customer success. So that's the history lesson. So what I'm saying is, in a year or two, customer success has to reestablish and redefine itself, resulting in paying for itself 3 to 5 times over. Okay, so instead of the risk of being perceived as a cost center, customer success has to figure out what is the vision to reinvent itself so that it is self-sustaining, self-sufficient, and pays for itself at least 3 to 5 times over. That means number one, you have to have a vision. How are we going to generate ROI internally? What does customer success include? Because it might be different from what we call it today, this free thing that we give out to everybody who buys the product. We have to determine who's paying, who's the real customer, right? Is it an internal customer, an external customer? And all of this will affect CSM's roles in the new future. So what will that look like? So I'm going to dive in a little bit more deeply now. So in doing these couple thousand plus discovery conversations, I realized that customers define value in a very particular way, and I'm not sure it's how we vendors see it. And I think we need to do a better job of lining up with how customers perceive and define value. So you'll see this little graphic. I would submit that 80% of the value a customer gets from working with us is from the product itself. Okay, it's not from motions and post-sale, it's from the product. Okay, if the product is consistently delivering the basic value that they expect because of the expectations that were set by our friends in sales, then things are going to probably go pretty well. Next is a level of support surrounding that product, which let's just call it reactive support, right? So are we honest, clear, responsive, helpful, easy to do business with? Yes. Then above that, you can see that it starts to get a little murkier or less clear. There's this thing called value add. Like, who defines what that is? What does customers, how do they define value add? How do they become delighted, And then beyond that, are we giving customers expertise and insights to help them do their jobs better? Because we can help them with the product all day long, but where you really make a connection is by saying, look, we understand part of your job has nothing to do with our platform, but we understand what your job outcome needs to be, right? And we're going to give you some insights and maybe even some expertise to help you get there. And then if all this stuff goes well, then you will understand how customers define innovation, and the customer will then trust you to bring them new ways to solve challenges. So that, let's not call that just new features at the product level. Let's call that real innovation. But I'm going to tell you the most important thing on this slide I haven't shown you yet, and it is this horizontal line, because everything below the line is written down somewhere, right? It's explicit. We told them the product would do this, it's doing this or that, plus or minus 5%. We told them we would support them. It's written down in a licensing agreement, statement of work, contract. It's been signed, right? Everyone understands the deal here, the bargain, the agreement. But when you go above that line, we don't understand what customers expect. And we have to ask, because generally they are not pounding on the table for this thing. How many times do you ever get a customer calling and saying, yes, I'd like some value add, please? It doesn't happen. They're expecting us to deliver for them on their behalf. And to do that, we need to learn what's important to them from their perspective. And it may not be about our product. It may be beyond the product. So these are the unspoken, unexpected things that we have to be more curious about. And when you do that, you can grow and differentiate. If you stay below the line and do a really nice job here, you will maintain what you have, right? Because even your competitors understand the explicit, obvious stuff. All the companies in a given category, they're like, yep, we got to do this, 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 and this. And we're all pretty similar, to be honest about it. But when you get up here, if you understand, what customers, what's going on in their business, what are their problems and priorities, that's when you really become a great company. And I would suggest and submit to you that the greatest companies are the ones that really define and understand and deliver unique value above and below the line. So we got to be curious based on how customers define value. Then there's the internal view. And this is something I push a lot when I do talks. So, and I hope it doesn't sound like a lecture, but I think it's what I'm hearing from customers. So I believe it's very important. There's a sort of the basic level of value that you can deliver internally to your company is by helping your customer, right? Just help them. Be easy to work with, as I said, be responsive, help them achieve the outcomes they want, right? So that's your job. The next level of value is, hey, I'm learning stuff from my customer, and I think I need to share it with my team, number 2 over here, and that's going to help us develop new use cases, develop process improvements, maybe create some new motions in the playbook, templates, etc. And by extension, you're helping your team, which helps other customers. So there's some scale there, right? You're hearing things, you're collaborating with your team, your CS team, let's say, and that enables you to help other customers. But here's where I see the huge opportunity for CS and where we can kind of avoid that train hitting us, right? And instead make the most of it. That is, how do we help other departments? Are we helping the product team determine and prioritize what enhancements would make customers' lives easier, but also get customers the value they expect? Are we helping sales by helping them really understand what the value prop is in the real world versus that value prop that maybe was handed down to marketing and sales on a slide somewhere? And in marketing, we can contribute content ideas based on what our customers are really struggling with. And finance, there's a whole list, right? You could in each department, you could come up with 10 things. And the ultimate level of internal value is to help the company hit their growth targets, to influence the P&L, the profit and loss statement, to help either refine or adjust product market fit, and the brand experience and the customer experience. And I don't see as much, at least in emerging companies, of CS teams contributing up here in 4 and 5. But the more you do contribute at that level, the more the company will say, okay, CS isn't just in charge of churn. They aren't just in charge of renewals. They are helping drive growth because they are identifying revenue opportunities and they're identifying insights that are indispensable to growing our business, right? So let's call that, at the bottom is the expected value you deliver, and at the top is the strategic value. And what I refer to this as, I'm honestly a little bit tired of hearing people talk about voice of the customer, because when we invented voice of the customer, we forgot to create something called the ear of the vendor. Like, who is listening to customers? Product is supposed to be listening. Sales listens to advance the sales cycle. Marketing is supposed to be listening. Certainly CS is hearing things, but are you really listening to the customer holistically to drive insights into the company's decision-making process? And you'll see in a minute why I'm talking about all this and why this is so important, because you have to have a vision for customer success. And to me, it doesn't matter if you're on this webinar and you're a leader managing tons of people and part of the C-suite, that's very relevant to this message. But if you're an individual contributor, you can help affect change in your company by spreading this message like, hey, what value are we really delivering internally? Like, how do we know we are indispensable as a department? So if you look at this journey or vision, as I call it, by stage, here's how I see it. We are somewhere in stage 1 to 2, right? So stage 0 is showing customers value below the line, right? Try to explain to them the value that they're getting. And if they're not getting value, honestly, try to convince them and make the case. Stage 1 is once we show them value below the line, we're reducing churn. Then it should say customer churn. Stage 2, which is kind of the stage many of us are in, is, okay, CS, you need to define yourself as uncovering you need to pay for yourself. You need to uncover new revenue opportunities. Leadership isn't being mean and unfair when they say that. They're saying we are trying to become profitable. In order to do that, we need to cut costs and increase revenue. So that's the equation. And then we get into stage 3, where we shift a little bit. This is today, there's nothing keeping CS from becoming the ear of the vendor internally, listen to all the stuff we hear about the market and the customer, and put it together in a way that affects change within the company and influences the company's roadmap, not just the product roadmap, but the brand, the decision-making, et cetera. And then stage 4 is delivering that customer value above the line. And so here's the difference between, you may have heard the expression, is our product a vitamin or is it aspirin? And CS is a product. I mean, it is a brand. So it either is going to be a dispensable brand, like, yeah, I could use my vitamins, but if I miss it for a couple of days, no sweat. Or is it going to be critical? Like, if I have a headache, I need aspirin. I can't get away without aspirin, or even you could say penicillin here, right? So we want to make it CS indispensable. And so this is how you do it with these stages 2 through 4. And this is, honestly, this is where you get into companies that are able to charge for customer success. I got to meet and work with the team at Splunk, which is a $3.5 billion company based in Silicon Valley. And I was initially stunned to find out that they have this thing called CS and they charge for it. Now, their definition of CS is a little different. It's got some things in it that traditionally are paid for, but they call the whole thing customer success. So I would love nothing more than to see the market expand out of this sort of notion of, yeah, hey, if you buy our product, we're going to throw in this team of CS people who are going to give you 4 free QBRs a year, where we're going to talk to you about the value that we think you're getting. I'd love to move away from that and see the world move into paid, because once you start charging for post-sales expertise and value, that makes it a lot easier to see how CS can pay for itself. And I want you to remember, I'm about to just completely overwhelm you with a lot of specific tactics and ways to do this, but I needed to set the stage here because this is so important. And I don't think enough folks in the CS world are talking about this journey that's happening. So that gets us to the topic. So the capabilities that you have today that have gotten you this far are, we build trust in CS, we are curious, we're helpful, we have basic product knowledge, and now we're layering in these other skills of automation and scale, right? But in the future, you're going to have to be, if you want to have a job in CS, once the automation and scale takes place, all the digitization and all the manual things go away, what are we left with? The humans in the mix are going to have to be strategic, consultative, have market insights, have advanced product expertise. So that's what we're going to talk more about today. And it's the topic, indispensable strategic skills for next gen CS teams. Spoiler, I'm going to talk about the human stuff that is very hard or even impossible to automate or to replace with AI. And so the skills look like this. Curiosity, it's free, it doesn't cost anything. We were curious when we were little kids, and then the curiosity kind of gets beaten out of us by all of our adult responsibilities, and we don't have time to be curious. But at work, it doesn't take much effort to be curious, and we'll talk more about that in a moment. You have to be able to listen and understand the customer, not just the things about our product that they like or don't like, or the risks, but what's going on in their business. So again, I'm not telling you you have to be a McKinsey or Bain or Accenture consultant. I'm telling you that when you're curious and you listen, you have to have the ability to solve not just for the feature requests, but for the outcomes, not only of your customer, but of their business, of their company. Whoops, sorry. And when you are curious and listen, you are also creating transparency and trust in both directions. So you're modeling the behavior for the customer and showing them that you're not just there to sell them something. And when you do that, they trust more and they open up more. Delivering indispensable value, we've talked about that. And then connecting the dots. What is the line that you can draw between the value proposition of your product or solution and what their customer's company is trying to accomplish? Because if you only align the value prop with the person you're talking to, the customer or the user, they might change, they might go away, right? But if you align it with something that's really important to the company, it's less likely that the connection will be broken and that they will leave. So we're going to do a couple things here. I'm going to bring you from this 30,000 foot sort of strategic level onto the ground level. And we're going to listen to parts of an actual customer conversation. I like the word customer so much, I used it twice. And what I want you to do as you listen to these clips is I want you to rate the customer's health score. It's not a test, it's an exercise, right? So it's either going to be red for there's noticeable risk, there's some risk, it's yellow, and then there's no risk, they're pretty happy, is green. So I want you to listen, and then I want you, as you are listening, I want you to put in the chat the color that you're diagnosing. Okay? So you're either going to type in the word red, the word yellow, the word green, and if it changes, you can change it. You can have multiple answers. So here we go. Here's the first clip. I will tell you that the person you're hearing from, who I interviewed, is the head of customer support for an online B2C jewelry brand, a very prominent brand that sells direct to consumer. Their vendor, who is my client, is this B2C jewelry brand's help desk platform. So my client's product, this help desk platform, supports this person who is the VP of customer support. So you don't need to know anything about e-commerce or anything to listen to this. So listen and pop into the chat what color.
Is there something that surprised you since you started working with?
I would say I'm amazed at the people and how I feel like people from various departments all really help and support you and are in contact with you and are very hands-on and involved and great at communicating. For full transparency, at my last company, we partnered with, and we would have discussions with our customer success manager, and that was it. I never heard from anyone in marketing or sales or management or anything. I have relationships not only with our CSM, but I routinely speak with and meet with their sales representative who closed the deal for us. A gentleman named took me out to lunch last month, I believe it was, or maybe the month prior. I'm routinely in touch with people from marketing. One person from marketing who I chat with pretty frequently. After this call, in about an hour, I have a call with who is also involved.
All right, I'm gonna stop because you get the idea. A lot of you said green, almost all of you, but then we have Jeanette and sorry, I'm on two monitors here. Michelle said yellow. Jeanette and Michelle, if you get a chance, Christine, green, yellow is not allowed. You have to pick one. Jeanette and Michelle, just put in the chat, why'd you say yellow? I'm not sure we'll get to it, but it is interesting that the same clip, multiple people can hear different things. Some people hear it I've had some people say, I will never say green for anything because there's always risk. We just have to find it. And I do respect that. So if you have a chance, anyone who said yellow, just pop in the chat why you said yellow. I'm going to play another clip in the meantime. I'm going yellow. Looks like he's overselling. Oh, to avoid sharing trouble. Holy cow. Josh, that's amazing. I mean, I'm not saying it's accurate. I'm saying that's a very strong take. We need to take into account more than the customer's happy. So Christine, you're spot on. That's exactly right. We have to keep asking and listening. The question you heard, what surprised you since you started working with us, is one of the questions I teach. It's a truth-seeking question, a disruptive question, because we really want to know. We don't want to assume what their experience was, and we don't want to say, so what's your experience with us? And I mean, NPS is fine for certain things. By asking about the surprise, which could have been positive or negative, we're really asking about the delta between what they expected and the experience they're getting. So I want to highlight that question. Feel free to use it. I would use it, 3 to 6 months into a new relationship with a customer. Do not ask it before 5 minutes before the renewal call or during the renewal call. So now I'm going to play the next clip.
Is there something?
Whoops, that's not the next clip. Here we go. Sorry.
Hypothetically, of course, if I said to you, I need to take away all of your tools and resources that you use to do your job, which one would you beg me to have back first? You just say, I can't live without it.
Yeah. I mean, it would be for sure, just the backbone of what we do, and we rely so heavily upon it. I get chills thinking about if we were all working out of a Gmail account, and it would just make things so much more difficult for us. Without a doubt, is the backbone of what we do. And of course, we have additional vendors in our tech stack, and the technology and services that they offer are definitely valuable to us, but we could live without some of them for sure. I'll give you a good example. Like we partner with for our customer surveys. So, hey, you just chatted with Bob. How was your experience? 1 through 5 stars.
All right, you get the idea on that one. So let's go to the next one.
Hypothetical. If you got a call or an outreach tomorrow from one of the competitors that you mentioned, on a scale of 1 to 5, how would you react? A 1 is you would ignore or delete the message. A 5 is you'd probably get back to them to want to know a little bit more about what that competitor is all about. What number would you give?
Well, I'm very courteous, so I would definitely politely inform whoever reached out to me that I appreciate it. I'm flattered that they're interested in working with me, but I would not entertain any possibility of switching over at this time. So I guess it would be pretty close to the 1 on the scale. I wouldn't ignore them, but I would definitely shoot it down pretty quickly.
All right, so you get the idea. I think it's safe to say that it's green with maybe some people. If you heard yellow, that means that you are curious. That means that you might have a bias towards saying, well, I didn't hear everything there is to hear. But I want you to test your skills again now, because what you heard, some happy things. You heard some positive things. There's no doubt about it. He said he might talk to a competitor out of courtesy, but not interested in switching at this time. So let's just go with green, right? But we need to do what we need to constantly do is remember that to dig. So there's 2 levels here. One is go higher and understand his big picture. The other is to dig deeper when we hear something interesting or something that we're questioning or suspicious about. So that's what I call the radically authentic discovery method. You go high by opening the aperture, ask about the company's priorities and challenges, ask the really good, someone said bold questions. Yes, they are bold. STFU or $TFU means silence. Embrace the silence. Keep silent until you fully understand, and then connect the dots. So let's see how that works when we ask bigger picture questions and connect the dots.
I'm going to go up to kind of the 30 or even 50,000 foot level for a moment. So if I could sneak into a board meeting there or the senior leadership meeting, what do you think is the biggest priority or challenge that's being discussed at the board level for the next 6 months to a year?
I think the biggest challenge that would be discussed during board meetings would be, so I think you might be aware over the last year or two, Apple made some serious changes to their privacy laws with the iOS 14 update, I believe it was, and that has had a massive impact on digital marketers and customer acquisition. The cost of customer acquisition is much higher. It's harder to track, what customers are looking at from a data privacy and cookie standpoint. And with that, it's been a big challenge for us, and I think a lot of direct-to-consumer brands, because it just makes it that much more difficult and expensive to acquire new customers. And I know that's been a large point of emphasis, not only in recent times, but dating back to last year.
All right. So they're having some challenges. They have their own train in the tunnel coming at them, as you heard. So now we're going to go to the next clip.
What is the biggest thing that you need to get better at in the next, 6 to 12 months?
That's tough because I think they've done a great job, and they definitely listen to the customers, continue to, offer new products or features within the platform that makes our lives a little bit easier. But, one thing I've told them previously, and I'm happy to share with you too, some of their competitors, including, and they offer the ability to basically sell or send invoices to customers where they can pay for certain products through the help desk. And that's something that I think is very interesting, because right now my team does no selling whatsoever. But when you think about the upsell potential or the ability to make product recommendations and then seamlessly sell to these customers, I think there's a lot of potential revenue to be had, because we're the department that's speaking most closely with these customers. We're the ones who they trust us to provide them with products.
All right, here's the last one.
Is there anything that you can think of that might get your attention from a competitor that would cause you to just say, you know what, we're happy, but I will take a meeting, because you never know what you're going to learn, or the door is not completely closed. The fact that it might be half the price, or
what I would say is there's been a big emphasis in terms of every dollar counts, and really making sure that we're being efficient with our money and not overspending on anything. And so I know for a fact that one of the competitors is cheaper, and I think that if I spoke with our internal finance team and they said, hey, when your contract is coming to an end, we really need to reduce some of our customer service related expenses, and it's your responsibility to identify ways, for us to reduce costs on that front. Then I think I would have to give some look, just because, they are significantly less expensive than, and we did, of course, make the choice to continue our partnership with, despite approaches from, and I was aware of the fact that they were cheaper. But I think that if in the future we significantly had to reduce our customer service expenses, then I would have to give another consideration. I would like to think that I'd be very transparent with in terms of our needs to reduce costs, and hopefully they could work with us. But I think definitely cheaper, and I think people in the customer service world are aware of that. So I think that's one of their selling points, is that they are cheaper than some of the other competitors, such as.
If was able to get that message across to your leadership, do you think that would make a difference? In other words, it can be tempting if it's that, it's a certain percentage cheaper, regardless of what makes sense for you and your goal. Is that a risk, I guess?
I would say it could be a moderate one for sure. I think my boss, I previously reported to our CFO and co-founder.
So we're getting clues, right? As soon as he said previously reported to, then something might be changing. Sorry about the keyboard click noise. I didn't realize that was a factor here. I apologize for that. So let's do this. I'm going to cut to the chase. So I'm going to speculate that if you're listening, there's a couple things happening. There is risk, right? It's probably not green anymore, despite the fact that if you only listen to the happy parts, which someone pointed out, I can't see the name, but someone said, don't ask leading questions. It's exactly why you don't ask leading questions. You have to ask open-ended, truth-seeking questions like these. And by the way, if anyone wants those, you can go to my website and just, you can get the questions, a little cheat sheet with some of the questions on them. And so let's go here. Can you connect the value dots? This is the strategic skill that makes you indispensable as a CSM. It's not just about the risk. It is about the risk partially, but it's not just about the risk. Here's what I would say. Here's how I summarize this. If you look and say, what's the health score? And just with a little comment for each one, clips 1 through 3, you would say green, definitely high satisfaction. He explicitly said no possibility of switching at this time. As far as understanding the customer challenges and priorities and the risk and opportunities, we didn't ask about that. We just asked really nice. There were disruptive questions, but we didn't really dig. If you add all the clips together now and you analyze them using the RAD method, right? It's yellow, clearly yellow. Overall, the relationship's positive, but vigilance is needed on competitive pricing and evolving service features. So let's go deeper. Let's piece this together and connect the dots. What is the customer's company challenge or priority? It was very clear. He even said, I don't know if you know this, but Apple has changed their privacy settings. This was 2-3 years ago, and it's affecting our customer acquisition cost. So it's more expensive and difficult to acquire customers given iOS privacy changes. And you didn't hear this in the clip. They are actually ramping up a retail store strategy, bricks and mortar, to offset the impact partially. The risk is customer is clearly aware of cheaper options. And it wasn't clear, but that one of those cheaper options has this feature that they talked about. There may be a need to cut costs, potentially. This was, again, 3 years ago before the downturn. And there are changes in internal leadership, so the strategic priorities might shift. When you think about what's the opportunity in a very concise way, this vendor that you heard about is sitting on a missing feature that competitors offer, which is the ability to sell and generate revenue through the help desk. They don't do that today. So if you look at this vendor wanting to pay for itself and ROI internally and externally, the ability to generate revenue is awesome, but they're not doing it. They don't offer that feature because, as he's clearly said, this would enable upselling directly during the support interactions. So when you break it down this way, you see how much you would have missed if you just stopped with the happy stuff and you weren't strategic. I would say the best example of strategic is asking about his company's board level priorities, right? You don't have to have an answer when they start opening up. You become the student as a CSM. You're learning and thinking, like, how do we line up with that? Like, is that a board priority that we can help fix or offset or contribute to? And in this case, yes, the answer is the upselling and generating revenue from the support platform, which is currently 0 new revenue, would help offset the slowdown in customer acquisition. Because the reality, as you heard him say, was we're not able to more as efficiently do marketing online because the privacy settings have changed. So that is the essence of being a strategic CSM, is helping the customer do something that is outside the typical scope of your product, but it could be in the product. So I would just submit to you the biggest risk of all is that a CSM hears this from a customer and doesn't bring it to the team and doesn't say, hey, aren't a lot of our customers in the e-commerce business? Yeah. So wouldn't they all be affected by Apple changing the privacy? Yeah. All right, well, who else's customer is having this issue? Let's ask. And then 3 weeks later, you have 50 customers all begging for this feature. And then you go to product and you say, let's collaborate on this. Let's explain to you what we heard. Let's play you the gong clips or whatever of customers saying this in real life. Now, I'm going to give you a little twist here. This summary, what you're looking at, came from a ChatGPT prompt. Now, the difference between ChatGPT, in my view, and the reason that it is so able to clearly hear what's going on in the conversations and spit out a really good summary, better summary, in fact, than almost every team I've ever worked with, when I play these exact clips, they focus here on the risk. They're not hearing the big picture connection and the opportunity. When you feed this stuff into ChatGPT, what you get back is a very clinical, unemotional, unbiased, it may not always be accurate, you have to check it, a very unbiased view that's unemotional and very raw about what's going on here. And it can make your job so much easier on the scale side by feeding transcripts in and doing it at scale, right? A bunch of transcripts, and if you might hear the same type of thing 50 times in 50 calls. So you might be asking at this point, and then we're going to wrap it up. You might be asking at this point, yeah, this is all great. How do we be more strategic? Like, we're really busy. Our calls, our QBRs are packed to the gills from 1 hour of worth of slides. Well, I got some answers for you. First of all, that questions and discussion slide that's buried at the end of all your decks, make it the first slide. Get them to open up in the very beginning about what's going on in their business by asking one of the board question or something else. And then in the rest of the meeting, you can position and frame the content you have to share with them based on how it aligns with what they said are the big challenges, right? Ideally, you would know the answers to those board questions before you go into the QBR, so you can tune the slides accordingly, but make the part of the meeting conversational about them. Forrester research has a stunning statistic that says basically 88% of executives would prefer a conversation over a presentation. Why? Because presentations are like guardrails. We put them out there as vendors to keep the conversation going in the direction we want it. And it leaves customers feeling that they don't have a safe space to contribute what's going on with them. And then they think we don't care. And then guess what? The next time we want to meet, they don't show. Skip the lengthy meeting introductions. That drives me nuts. If you have 4 people coming to your meeting on the vendor side, send their LinkedIn links and their job and their little role responsibility in the invitation, and people can read it if they want. This other idea is sending the slides in advance. Why do we think that if we don't send the slides in advance, that the customer will be more likely to show up? Send the slides in advance. Let the customer look at it at 3 in the morning if that's when they like to look at stuff. You can even do this, and I do this all the time. Send a little Loom or brief Loom video walking them through the deck, 2 minutes, and highlight the top items that you want to cover, right, in advance. And the last one is from my friend Jeff Brunsback, who was one of the co-founders of the Gain, Grow, Retain community. Just send this is the Amazon Jeff Bezos method. Send a 1-page pre-read memo that summarizes the key points from the deck. Let them see what your intentions are. I think agendas are so lame because they don't really explain anything. They're very generic. So try and put some substance into what you want to accomplish in the meeting, and don't be afraid to send it in advance, and you'll be freeing up 10, 15, 20 minutes in the meeting that you used to do presenting slides that they didn't really care about. With that, I'm not sure if there are questions in here. To be honest with you, I can't really read. Yeah, Gong does transcripts and summary. The summaries are helpful, but transcripts are gold. 100%. This is how you scale, right? This is how you do it. David, how are you? Hope that was helpful. I was going at a very fast pace here, but I want to just leave room to breathe. And I know we're up against the time limit, but I'm happy to answer any questions if we do have time.
All good, all good. I thoroughly enjoyed it. The chat's fully active, and I've appreciated everybody. We can run over if it's okay with the group. Does anybody have any last minute questions before we wrap up the session today?
Let me just throw in too that, David, I'd be happy if you send me the questions that people submit in the chat that we didn't have time for, or anything in the conversation. I'd be happy to do a video where I answer them, and then you can send it out to all the attendees.
Perfect. That's awesome, Bob. And so with that, I'll go ahead and wrap this up. So we are at the end of our sessions today. And as Bob mentioned, any questions that we weren't able to get to, we'll pass along over to Bob so that this way he can share his answers along with the recording of today's session, which will be posted in our resource hub at matic.io. All Summit attendees are going to get notified when these recordings go live, so don't worry about that. And thank you, Bob, for joining us today again. And thank you for everybody else for
Thanks for having me, everybody. Great conversation.
Awesome, team. Talk to y'all later. See you soon, Bob.
Bye-bye.